Hey everyone, welcome back to Ken Michaels Radio. I'm having a blast doing all the shows that I do here on the Beatles. And a big thank you to all of you who wrote in with such a great reaction to the last couple of shows in particular, where we had Beatley Tone on, naming 10 deep tracks, actually a little bit more, from John Lennon's solo catalog, which was a lot of fun. And also having Al Sussman and Bruce Spicer on for that early versus late Beatles show and my concern about, less of an appreciation for the early Beatles period out there. If you haven't seen those shows, do check them out and please write in. I love your comments and I love writing back to many of you. And if you have any ideas for this channel, feel free to write to me at everylittlething@att.net. My special guest is my favorite guy friend from Argentina. He's also the only guy I know from Argentina, which is part of the reason why he is that way. But we met several years ago. Sometimes I forget how we did meet, but we've had a lot of great conversations and a lot of arguments too, very friendly ones on the Beatles. And we're having him on the show because this lucky guy got to see Paul McCartney in concert in Argentina in Buenos Aires. So I thought I'd have him on so he can talk about what that experience was like and his life seeing Paul in concert, which has been many times over. His name is Javier Lubelski, and Javi, welcome to the channel.
Thank you for having me, Ken. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to finally get you on the channel. We've known each other for many years, and I certainly like to get your input on all things Beatles and solo Beatles. And you could be my South American expert on the Beatles here. Anything covered in South America, how South Americans look at the Beatles, I'll turn to you.
Of course.
Okay, so you got to see Paul on October 5th and 6th. This was at River Plate Stadium in Buenos Aires. How many times have you kept track of how many concerts you've seen of Paul in your life?
I've seen Paul so far 34 times
Wow.
since 1993.
All right.
And I'm going for my 35th on October 23rd because I'm flying to Cordoba for the last of Paul McCartney's concerts in Argentina because I don't know who does the scheduling, but he did two concerts in Buenos Aires. Now he's performing in Chile in a few hours.
Right.
Then he goes to Brazil, and then he comes back to Argentina, and it's a back and forth thing. So um, he will be performing in a city called Cordoba, a couple hours flight from Buenos Aires on the 23rd, and it will be my 35th concert. And what's funny is I've just seen last weekend Paul McCartney in River Plate Stadium, as you said, and that's the same place where I saw him for the first time
Ah,
ever when I was 16 years old in 1993, December 10th and 11th. It was actually three gigs, 10th, 11th, and 12th, but I didn't gather enough money for a third concert in a row, so I only got to see the first two. He
only.
did it in Paris, and that was the first time a Beatle visited Argentina.
Okay. What was that experience like for you to see him for the first time? This was obviously the New World Tour, doing songs some off the ground. Um, and also, ever since the 89-90 tour, especially going very heavy into Beatles. Um, what do you remember most about that tour in particular? Obviously, the first time has got to be so exciting. What was it like the first concert in particular, from what you remember?
Well, the fact that Paul took the stage and the first chords to Drive My Car started blasting in the stadium, and all the people went absolutely crazy
Hmm.
because we are very passionate here in South America and in Argentina in particular. So the fact that we had a Beatle for the first time, people that had loved him for decades, we didn't have Wings visit Argentina. We didn't have the Beatles visit Argentina. We didn't have Paul McCartney solo until the New World Tour.
Right.
So the fact that the guy was there in the flesh in front of you and performing a Beatles song, it was like a roar from 50 to 60,000 people.
Right.
And the whole audience went crazy. And a lot of young girls were starting to faint. And it was like mayhem, that start of the concert. Because if you remember, when the Flowers in the Dirt tour took place a couple of years before that, there was the great comeback for Paul. Um, he started the whole tour with Figure of Eight, which was a new song. So it was a bold move because you usually start the concert with a bang and finish with a bang. But he decided to start with a new song that wasn't that well known. It was a new song then.
Yeah.
But for the New World Tour, he changed his mind and started with a bang with Drive My Car. So people went crazy, and the concerts were fantastic. And he was very close to the end of the tour because after Buenos Aires, he did one more gig in Chile, and then it was over. It was December 1993, and no more touring for quite a few years, right?
Hmm.
So that was quite that moment when he took the stage and Drive My Car started sounding is something that got ingrained in my brain, and I will always remember that time when I saw him for the first time. And that's something that happens probably to many people, even though I know people in America that was lucky enough to see him 100 times, 120 times, because of course it's easier to follow Paul when you're in the US and you can go from city to city. Okay, where is Paul going now? Detroit. Let's take a flight to Detroit. Where is he going now? Portland, Oregon. Let's fly to Portland. But when you're in Argentina, distances are so long.
Yeah.
And where is Paul now? In Brazil. Oh my God, that's like a 5, 6 hour flight. I have to, uh, is my idea okay to fly to another country, another language, and so on? So it's a lot more trouble when you're in a country like Argentina to follow Paul around. But I know people from Argentina that saw him twice as many times as I did. So and also you get to have these groups of friends, and we are called the Beatles cult. My group of friends in Argentina, the Beatles cult, and we follow Paul around. Like when he does a tour of South America, we do the planning together to fly to other countries, book hotels, get how to get the tickets. Because something as simple as getting a ticket with an Argentinian credit card that might not work to get a ticket in a ticket master from, say, Peru, to
Uh-huh.
give you an example. So it's a lot of planning, and we have a group for that.
Boy, that almost sounds like Fans on the Run, that group. You know, they all get together, they all kind of know each other, and, they see each other at various shows. So, it's like going to a Beatle fest, in many
I
ways.
know a few of them. I knew of the
Yeah.
fans on the run.
Yeah.
Some of them I think are great guys, the ones I know.
Hmm.
And what is funny is that usually they are from the US, of course, and they would follow Paul around the US and never ventured much outside the US except for going, say, Liverpool, London, like very specific places outside the US. But on this show in particular, some of them decided, let's go to Argentina, let's do some. For them, it must be like going to Africa for a safari or something like that.
It's
And some of them were
Yeah.
shocked at the passion that the fans had in here because it's standing room admission, while in the US you usually have seats
Yeah.
for concerts in front of the stage. In here we have standing room, and people are a lot younger than the audiences in the US. Like the average is probably 25,
Hmm.
and people get crazy and jump and sing along and push and stuff that doesn't happen in a Paul McCartney concert in Las Vegas, to name one place.
That's interesting because I didn't know that the age of the audience there was necessarily younger. Here in the States, it's really wide between kids and their parents and grandparents. It could be anyone from teenagers to people in their 70s and 80s, you know. But in Argentina, it's much younger.
I believe so. I have seen Paul in Detroit, Michigan, at the Joe
Yeah.
Louis Arena. I've seen Paul in Las Vegas, in Los Angeles, and in Hollywood, Florida. And it's striking the age difference than when you see him in either Brazil or Argentina. It's like a lot younger, the audience for Paul. And perhaps that is why he comes back so often to South America. He likes the passion that the fans have in here. So when the promoter comes to him and say, "Hey, what do you think of this?" "Yeah, let's go to Brazil again. Let's go to South America again." Even though the economy sometimes it's not the best.
Yeah.
Um, to put it, I don't want to get into politics, but let's say that the average audience member in America has a lot more money to attend concerts than in Argentina or Brazil, where perhaps you save for 6 years to go see Paul McCartney.
Yeah. You and I are kind of in the same category with like I've seen Paul probably around 30 to 35 times. I never kept track of it all. But it's kind of difficult for me financially to hop around the entire United States to go from show to show, not only for the tickets, but for hotel rooms and everything else. But there are fans out there, and it really boggles the mind when it's people from another country flying in, from Japan to the US. It's Australia. And only just recently did Paul return again to Australia. So,
Mhm.
and I feel so good for those countries where Paul is aware of where he's played and where he hasn't played and wants to hit some of those areas or places where he hasn't played for a long time and then returns there. But when you saw him in 93, was the concert everything you hoped it would be?
Yeah, I'm 99% sure that when I saw him, Paul is Live was already released by then.
Hmm.
So I had a good idea in the pre for those that are very young, those were the pre-internet days where you wouldn't look at a set list 10
Yeah,
minutes after a concert because we had no internet. So I think Paul is Live was already released. We had Tripping the Life Fantastic
right.
for the previous tour. So I had an idea of what the gig was like and what the songs were like. I was very surprised when after doing on the second show, after doing I think it was Off the Ground. After that song, he started to improvise a version of "It's Now or Never," the Elvis Presley song
Uh,
based on "O Sole Mio."
right.
He started singing in an operatic voice. "It's now or never," and the band started following him, and he did like a whole verse, and that was fantastic because that was like off the script.
Which he often doesn't do.
Yeah,
The same script over and over.
I'm pretty sure that everyone who has seen Paul more than a half a dozen times know that Paul sticks pretty much to the script. And there's a lot of discussion online in the different forums, like, "Oh, why doesn't he change the set list? Why doesn't he do this? Why doesn't he do that?"
I say that all
And
the time. Yeah.
everyone has an opinion, and I don't believe no, I don't believe anyone is particularly 100% right. Of course, me as a person who saw him 34 times, I would love to see more deep cuts make it into the set list or to see him change from one concert to the next half a dozen songs. But let's be honest, Paul is 82 years old. Each song for a big stadium has what happens in the screens is uh, already synchronized with the music, which
Hmm.
you see on the screens for each song. So it's not easy to do those changes. I mean, I know the Rolling Stones do it. They change. They do something like for each concert, they put online a poll, and fans can vote for songs and can pick a couple of songs for that night's gig.
Right.
So that is a change in the set list. And Bruce Springsteen, I think, did something like that.
I kind of wish Paul would do that, but I know like in the
Yeah,
of like Mrs. Vanderbilt when he started doing that, that was because of a Russian fan club that voted it as a song that they would most like Paul to do. So he
yeah.
started putting that in the set list.
Paul has said several times that he puts together a concert and a set list thinking about the person who will see him for the first time and thinking, okay, if I'm going to see Paul McCartney for the first time, what would I want to listen from him? What are the songs I want him to play? And that's in his mind frame when he puts together the set list. But then when he went to the Ukraine in '08,
Hmm.
someone told him, "Oh, in Russia and in the Ukraine, your most popular song is Mrs. Vanderbilt." So he put it in the set list, and he got thousands of people singing "Ho, hey ho,"
Right,
and the response was so good. He kept the song in the show for the whole tour,
right,
right? But unless someone comes to Paul and says, "Hope of Deliverance," it is your most popular song in Germany,
right.
to mention the place, then Paul sticks to the script, and he doesn't want people to take bathroom breaks or not to cheer crazily after each song. So let me tell you a story. In 2013, Paul started his tour in Brazil, and I saw the first three concerts in
Hmm.
Belo Horizonte, Goiânia, and Fortaleza. And on all three gigs, he did Hope of Deliverance. And the audience responded with a rapturous applause and singing along, and it was great. Um, when the tour hit the US, then people was like, "What is this? I don't know this song." And they
Uh-huh.
would take. And after a couple of gigs, boom, the song was out of the set list for good. So that gives you a hint of Paul's mind frame on how he picks the set list. If he sees that the audience is not responsive, then the song is out.
Same thing with Mull of Kintyre. I mean, he'll do the song in the UK since it was such a massive hit. It was really a big hit all around the world except the US, which is probably why he doesn't do it in the US. And he'll do
Something similar with Hope of Deliverance.
and Hope of Deliverance was also a big hit, a top 10 hit in Spain. So he's done it in Spain as well. So he's aware of that.
He was big in Europe and in South America, but it bombed in the US as the advanced song, the first single from his upcoming new album, Hope of
Right.
Deliverance. He had bigger hopes than the chart placing that it had in the end in the US. So it's not one of his most popular songs in there in the US. But and still he continues to do Mr. Kite, that wasn't a hit,
Right.
but it wasn't his song either. It was we all know John Lennon sang it on the Sgt. Pepper's album, but he finds it amusing because he loves to play it on the bass. He likes the bass line he came up with,
Uh-huh.
so he just adores the bass part he came up with for the song. So he plays it again and again and again, tour after tour.
That's why he's kept it in. You've heard him say
Yeah,
that?
that's what he said. Yeah.
Okay. There are a few changes. As much as I love Egypt Station, you can get rid of Come On to Me in the set list at this point. Um, you know, I I understand the tributes to John and George, and I know how much Here Today is so important to him and meaningful to him. But he can cover any John Lennon song he wants to as a tribute, and it's been almost 25 years of Here Today and something for George Harrison. There's so many great George Harrison songs he can cover. He's done All Things Must Pass before a little bit in concert, but I just wish that he would mix it up a bit. Now, if you followed what I've said in many of my shows, I'm in a position where I find it really difficult to complain at all about any of the Beatles, about Paul, Ringo, the estates of John and George, because I feel like they don't owe us anything. And in the case of Paul, he's 82 years old. He doesn't have to be doing this. It's a gift to all the fans of the world, especially the ones that have never seen him before or have only seen him a few times. But, it kind of bothers me in a way that he has that mindset of what would fans want to hear him do if it was the first time. What about caring about all the fans that have bought every record he's made? Don't they matter? And I'm sure that there are songs that he's dying to do live that are favorites of his that he figures are too obscure and people might walk out on them. Well, the hardcore fans won't. And he could play smaller venues and sell out those and announce ahead of time that he could do deeper cuts. And fans will accept it. But this is the way Paul is. I love him the way he is. But, there are people out there that, it seems like when he puts out new albums, he's very proud of them when they come out. And then he'll play a new song or two from the new album. And then next tour, he ditches them. Except he's still doing Come On to Me. He's still doing My Valentine. He's
He's
still
still
doing
doing new.
Calico Skies, you know. Calico Skies he'll do.
Yeah.
Uh those few songs. But
At this point, he is doing zero songs from the 1990s, if I remember correctly. Zero from the 1990s. Here Today from the 1980s, and that's it. And from the past few decades, he's doing new from new. My
right.
Valentine from
Yeah.
Kisses on the Bottom, because Nancy goes with him on tour and he sings it to her every night of the tour. So that's why he keeps My Valentine. He does Come On to Me to get Egypt Station represented on the set list.
Hmm.
But going back to your comment about the tributes, um, I think that after so many years of something, and pretty much we all heard Paul doing something live at one point or another,
Hmm.
I think it would be quite the shock if he tried to do, instead of something, Here Comes the Sun. If you look at Spotify, that's the most streamed Beatles song.
Right.
I haven't checked lately, but at one point it was the most streamed Beatles song of all. Of all the Beatles
I know
song,
that.
Here Comes the Sun was number one. So can you imagine Paul going into the chords with his acoustic guitar of Here Comes the Sun?
Yeah.
People would go crazy.
People would go crazy if he did any Beatles song that he's never done live before, even if they're not his songs. He can get away with any John song or any George song. He can get away with a Ringo song if he wants to. He's done a little bit of Yellow Submarine in concert.
Yeah, because in Brazil, I was there. People, after the John and George tributes, people would start shouting, Ringo, Ringo, Ringo. And he would go, in the town where I
Right.
was born. But yeah, um, as per the tributes, going to the tributes, I want to tell you that Paul added Now and Then to the set list
I
on
know.
this.
I was going to get into that.
Okay.
But
I don't want to spoil the next question, so go ahead.
okay. But do you look at that as a tribute?
Well, it's a John Lennon song, and every time remember that when Paul started out with Wings and then solo, he would be very careful to do his own songs, only the songs he
Right.
wrote, the songs he sang on
Hmm.
the record, and outside of the tribute he did when he did the medley of Help, Strawberry Fields, and
Right.
Give Peace a Chance. Outside of that, he would only do Paul McCartney songs, right?
Right.
But then he started doing A Day in the Life, even though a bit of in there is from him. He started doing
A Hard Day's Night.
A Hard Day's Night,
Yeah.
which is the song with which he opened the second night in Buenos Aires.
Yep.
And now he did Now and Then, which I don't know. The good thing about Now and Then, now it's not only that Paul added a new song, because as you said correctly, any new song he adds is a plus.
Sure.
Even if it's a song I don't like. I personally dislike Temporary Secretary.
Hmm.
I dislike it very, very much. But when I was at a gig and Paul started playing it, I was like, yeah, just because it was a different song I
Right.
haven't heard before from Paul. So with Now and Then, the giant screens on the stage would screen the video that Peter Jackson did for Now and Then.
Right.
And it was impossible. I mean, I couldn't hold the tears. I was a mess. I was a mess. I was dehydrating from crying so much when Now and Then started. I couldn't help it.
Yeah.
How can you not? It's Paul McCartney in front of you singing, and you see the video on the back of the screen on the back.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty of videos now on YouTube of Paul doing Now and Then from different concerts. And I just think it was a great addition to the set list. And vocally, he sounds really good on there with Abe doing the harmony.
Well,
Most of
Abe
all,
is
yeah,
very important to the Paul McCartney sound nowadays because he's the support for the voice. I mean, we all know Paul McCartney. No one's voice at 82, no one has the same range than at 22. But Avi's there and he does a great job at helping Paul out with that.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, as someone who goes to a lot of concerts, and I love a lot of singers from the past who may not be looked at as being rock and rollers, but they're in their 80s and they sound phenomenal. Just seeing Tom Jones recently, and my God, he sounds exactly the same as he did when he was in the 60s. And his voice is so powerful. I've seen Paul Anka, and his voice is really powerful. Granted, they're not singing Helter Skelter, okay? But at the same time, their voices have held up really strong. So, you know, a lot has been said about Paul and his voice. For the most part, I've defended Paul because, for one thing, he should be doing what he wants to do. But I just think so many years of doing this and giving you 3 hour concerts, that has a way of really wearing on the voice. And a lot of
And
the songs,
smoking doesn't help either, Ken.
well, he gave that up a long time ago.
Yeah, but still, how many years did he smoke? All kinds of stuff. So kids, if you're watching this, do not
You,
smoke. It's
you,
bad for your throat and your voice.
you slipped that in, all kinds of stuff. I like that. Thanks. Thanks a lot. But and Rusty Anderson deserves a lot of credit because he nailed that guitar solo on Now and Then that Paul did on the record. So it sounded so good. But I'll ask you a question that I asked in a previous show. The only thing that I find odd about performing Now and Then is that in all the years that Free as a Bird and Real Love came out, he never did those live.
I have a theory about that, Kenneth.
Uh-huh.
I think that
Smith business. Yeah.
I think that now and then I see it as more of a Paul project because he took it upon himself to finish it so many years later. Free as a Bird and Real Love were more Beatles projects because it was part George, part Ringo, part Paul, and the recording of John. But and also remember that when Free as a Bird and Real Love came out, Paul wasn't touring, and he didn't tour until
2000.
7 years later.
Uh-huh.
So they were way in the rearview mirror by then.
Well, he was doing songs from Flaming Pie, and that was right after the anthology.
I know he did Calico Skies and he did Flaming Pie,
Yeah.
but Free as a Bird and Real Love were not fresh, were not new songs. But Now and Then is Paul's pet project. He took it upon himself to finish it. He convinced Ringo to help him finish it.
Hmm.
There are reports, unconfirmed, that I don't know if you heard him, that Ringo wasn't very much interested, but Paul convinced him to help him finish Now and Then after so many years. Because you know that there are many theories on why the project was ditched.
Yeah.
On one hand, you hear technology wasn't there to fix the cassette tape in those days, which is a good argument. And you get all the other theories saying that George said this is, I don't want to say a curse word, but George say this is asterisks
Okay.
and stormed off the session and never returned. So George refused to finish Now and Then. But so many years later, with the current technology, Paul took it upon himself to finish it and release it as the last Beatles song. And it's still fresh, it's very recent. So I think those are the main differences between Now and Then and Free as a Bird and Real Love onto why Paul said, okay, let's do it. Let's do it in concert. Let's add it to the set list.
That's good. I like that theory. I could go with that. Like you said, it was his own pet project there. Okay. But let me just ask you, in comparing the band that he had in 93 with the band that he's had for almost 25 years now, is there a preference you have? I mean, you've had so many
Oh,
years of the current band. So there's
yeah, I mean, I think there is a reason why Paul kept it for 25 years, and it's not as difficult to see why. I mean, uh, you cannot get rid of Abe. To me, Abe is such an important piece in the band
Mm,
because of his skills to play the drums that we all know. His backing vocals are second to none. He does support Paul on each song basically by
mm.
now. He fleshes out Paul's voice on the most difficult and challenging songs. So, and he does the dance in Dance Tonight. He does the little choreography that goes great with the audiences. So I don't see anyone better than Ave for the Paul McCartney gig until he brings Ringo, of course,
Mm.
on the drums. But I think Paul kept them because they know how to rock, they know how to adapt to each different song. They have a great sound, they sound great together. And I remember seeing the 93 band and thinking, these are old guys. I was a 16-year-old and I was like, these are old guys. And I didn't think they rock convincingly, if that's a word in English.
Huh.
The 93 band, I didn't think they rocked. I cannot imagine the 93 band, the Off the Ground band and the Flowers in the Dirt band doing Helter Skelter, for example. But the
No,
current band,
okay.
I see them doing Helter Skelter. I see them more as rockers and more poppers for the earlier band. So I think this band rocks more convincingly. So that's why I like the current band more.
They've also had more years to convince you as a rock band. But
Of course.
when you
And I'm
talk,
sure you know that this band is there kind of by accident because Wix wasn't Paul's first choice for keyboards. But
mm,
I think a guy called Gabe Dixon,
yep,
who played on Driving Rain, was
yep.
going to be on the tour, but he declined the offer. I mean, who declines to join Paul McCartney on tour?
Uh, Hugh McCracken,
Well,
David
yeah,
Rosa.
yeah,
No?
that's right. So Gabe Dixon said, "No, I want to focus on my solo project."
Yeah,
So Paul had to start the O2 tour. So
right,
he said, "Let's bring Wix. He knows the songs already."
right.
So Wix was back on the chair for the keyboards.
Wicks is some story. He's this quiet guy in the back that just gets the job done. And he's probably been on more shows with Paul McCartney than anybody,
Yeah.
you
I'm
know.
pretty sure that by a long mile,
Yeah,
Wix has the record for the Guinness record for most shows with Paul.
yeah. And what do you think of well, you said old guys for for the 93 tour. I think you might feel that way because the 93 tour was a little bit toned down from the 89-90 tour. There was more acoustic stuff. You know, Paul was getting ready for it was after the unplugged, era. Well, he was also doing a few um shows in small clubs where it was half electric, half acoustic, and some of that acoustic stuff transferred over to the 93 tour. So there was I don't want to say it was a mellow tour, but it wasn't as rocking as the 89-90 tour. But yeah, so but Hamish and Robbie, I mean Robbie McIntosh is a fantastic guitar player. I gotta
I
feel
agree.
sorry for Chrissy Hine because it seems like Paul's always taking members away from her, from the Defenders. And Hamish Stewart's a great bass player too, and a good harmonizer.
Yeah,
So,
but I still prefer the backing vocals done by the current band,
uh,
uh, especially Ave, than the ones by Hamish. Um, and I also remember the acoustic. Well, in the current gig, there's also an acoustic set. The difference is that we don't have to have Robbie play an acoustic song on the guitar to get the stage ready. Now with today's technology and roadies, they get the stage ready in a minute to do the acoustic set.
okay.
But
It's only 2 minutes what Robbie did.
yeah, I know.
He could have a little
But
solo spot.
I know a lot of fans that favor the Flowers in the Dirt band with Chris Whitten on drums.
Uh-huh.
and that's their favorite live band for Paul. But if I had to pick one to take with me to play for me on my birthday party, I would pick the current one.
Okay, very good. So tell me, since we're talking about this band from the 2000s on, there have been some changes in the set list, not a lot. I've often commented that I look at Paul's set list as having A songs, B songs, and C songs. The A songs are the ones that he has to do no matter what. Hey Jude, Let It Be, Ben on the Run, Live and Let Die. Maybe I'm Amazed, although for a while he wasn't doing that and he brought it back. Um, and then the B songs are probably the most interesting because those are the ones that are like interchangeable. He'll do like "And I Love Her" one show and "Things We Said Today" or "I'm Looking Through You" or "I've Just Seen a Face." Those are all like B level songs where he can,
Can work it out.
yeah. And then there's the C ones, which are usually the ones that he only does temporarily from the new album. So what keeps it interesting for me is when he has played with those B songs. If you go to two shows in a row, it may not be exactly the same. Like we talked about opening with The Hard Day's Night in one show, and he also opened with Can't Buy Me Love at another show. So if you go to two shows in a row, it may not be 100% the same. So that's a little bonus there. So have you been pleased overall with the set list from the 2000s on? Is this in your mind what you want Paul to do?
Well, it's a difficult question because the show is not catered for the people who see him dozens of times, like me. It's catered for the first time goer,
Right.
and he cannot do Some People Never Know and Tomorrow and Take It Away
Sure you can.
or Footprints in. I mean, he has to do the songs for the people that go for the first time. But I remember when he did Hope for the Future briefly for a few concerts, or he did Come and Get It
Yeah,
briefly. I never got to see that one, and I would love to hear Come and Get It. He's the one who wrote it. He did the demo playing all the instruments, and I never got to hear Come and Get It live. But I've heard from people who were at the concerts where Come and Get It was performed
right.
that the audience response was zilch, nothing.
Really?
What is
It was
this? Like,
it was a major hit here, top 10 hit here. It was it in Europe where he played it. I would have thought that they would have been familiar with Come and Get It.
yeah, well, but it left the set list for good.
Yeah.
So going back to the set list I have seen in the past few years, I think that people leave extremely happy the concerts, and I don't hear anyone complain except those who watch the crappy videos on YouTube filmed with phones that shake like this and have
Um,
horrible sound, and they say, "Oh, Paul has to quit touring. He can't sing anymore. He's too old for this."
hmm.
But people that go to the concerts leave the concert with a smile that doesn't fit the face. The smile so big. I
Hmm.
see the people around me, and out of the 34 concerts I've seen, I probably cried in 32 of the concerts. So I can't fault what Paul's doing. What Paul's doing, he does it greatly. He plays it safe, but who can blame him for playing safe? I mean, he's doing a stadium with 70,000 people. He's not doing a theater where he can play deep cuts and say, "This is a show where I tell stories and do songs you never heard before." No, he's playing it safe, and who can blame him? It's his choice. And
No doubt.
there's no right answer. Like, there's no Polish right or Polish wrong doing this.
Well,
Everyone has an opinion.
my theory is that there are songs that he's never done live before that he can get away with doing. You mentioned Take It Away. Take It Away was a top 10 single here in the United States.
No More Lonely Nights.
Yeah, I've mentioned that. Uncle Albert Admiral Halsey, Helen Wheels, was number.
Martha, My Dear.
Okay. Well, there's also Beatles songs too that he's never done live. And like I said, I wouldn't mind if he did John or George songs. I always remember when he did the concert for New York. for 9/11, and he met the guys in the Fab Four, the Beatles tribute band, backstage. And Will Lee is kind of like the leader of the band there, and they were talking about the Fab Four and being the tribute band that they are, and they're amazing musicians. And Paul said to him, "Really, do you do Tomorrow Never Knows?" Like of all the songs in the Beatles catalog, he was curious about Tomorrow Never Knows. If he did Tomorrow Never Knows in concert, the audience would go nuts. It doesn't matter if it's a John song. He was a big part of it. You know, I don't mean to complain. It's just that just playing devil's advocate here, if you're dealing with the greatest catalog of all time,
Yeah.
you'd be proud of
But
it a little bit more.
but I mean, before doing Hey Jude, could he go into a bit of Honey Pie, for
Yeah.
example? Why not? Just
Yeah,
do one verse at least. But for some reason, those songs were never attempted. Perhaps they were attempted at rehearsal. Paul didn't like the way they sounded.
right,
And I mean, I would love to be a fly on the wall when these guys get together. Paul says hello to the band. Let's rehearse for the tour. And
right.
someone says, let's try this. Let's try that. And they try different songs. I'm sure that Silly Love Songs was attempted at one point with this current band, I've
Mm.
heard, but it didn't work, so ouch. But can you imagine Silly Love Songs with the brass section that they have
Sure.
now? That would
It's
sound great.
somebody
Of
said to
course,
me, and I kind of agree with it, that Linda's presence on Silly Love Songs is so strong that to think about doing that without her, she's such a key ingredient to the record of Silly Love Songs. And Paul's never done it live since the 75, 76 tour.
yeah.
76. It came out in 76. But yeah, with a little luck, I know that they Wings rehearsed it for the 79 tour, but it didn't work out too well, which is why he didn't do it live. But that's another one. That's a number one hit. And he's never done it live before. So, he can get away with certain songs like that. He can get away with Spies Like Us, I think. At least there are people in the United States that are familiar with it. Doesn't get airplay like it did when it first came out, but I think he can get away with songs like those. And even if the public isn't totally familiar, you can't be too concerned about every single song and if people walk out. It's that way with every single artist. Every artist that's been around for a long time and they have a new album out, there's always going to be fans out there that don't care about the new album and they're going to walk out when he does those songs. In 2005, when Chaos and Creation in the Backyard came out, to me that's a masterpiece of an album. He announced these next three songs I'm about to do are from my new album. You don't do that. You're telling people you should really spring it on them and surprise them with it and have them listen to it, and then they'll give it more of a chance. But
Well, I've seen artists do that, and I've always wondered why. Like Elton John, I'm sure you're familiar with Elton,
yeah,
in his 2004 tour, he would go on stage and say, okay, the first 8 songs I'm going to do are for my new album. And I was
uh-huh.
like, what? That's bold. I mean, who starts the show with 8 new songs in a row from your new album? But
Right.
he did. And he went, okay, now the hits. Yay, everybody. But I remember that he did a lot of deep cuts in that tour that he never did again. I mean, he did Till There Was You in that tour, right?
Yeah, true.
Um,
He did I have trouble considering anything Beatles to be deep. But he did Please Please Me.
yeah,
Was that the same tour he did I'll Get You?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, she came in through
I've
the
read a
window,
discussion.
and Too Many People
Mhm.
as a medley.
Another day. He did it later.
Yeah.
Another day. But I've read a discussion online of people asking why the biggest Beatles song, I Want to Hold Your Hand, Paul never attempted it live. Either She Loves You or I Want to Hold Your Hand. He did A Hard Day's Night. He did I'll Get You. He did Please Please Me. He did so many songs around I Want to Hold Your Hand. But the song that broke them into the US and the world, basically, why? So there was a long discussion online about that.
There's so many questions we love to ask Paul. I guess that's one of them, but yeah. Anyway, so in your opinion, when you just saw him in Argentina, what songs did the band do the best? And what
Good
got the
question.
greatest crowd reaction, do you think?
Well, to be honest, I've seen the tour several times now, so it was not a new thing for me to see him last weekend. I saw the Get Back tour started in 2022, right?
I think so. Yeah.
And
They're
I
all so
and
similar, you know?
yeah, I know. But I saw the Get Back tour in Los Angeles and in Hollywood, Florida. Then I saw it last year in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, the last show of the year in December. And
Yeah.
I saw the show in Brasilia, the opening, the first show and the last show. And also I saw you know how Paul sometimes does these little unannounced gigs for
Yeah.
200 people, little pubs.
Right.
So Paul did that on the 28th of November in Brasilia, and he announced on the same day, they sent an email like the first 200 people that buys tickets can go see Paul on the warm-up gig at a small pub called the Clube do Choro. So excuse my Portuguese, Brazilian listeners. Clube do Choro is a very small place, like a pub, where it fits 200 people. And on the same day, I was lucky enough that I flew 2 days before the concert to Brasilia, so I was able to get a ticket and attend the gig. And I had all the odds in my favor because it was a work day, it was a Tuesday, and the concert was at 6 p.m. So people didn't have enough time to skip work or school or whatever they were doing. But I was there on my vacation. I flew to Brazil and I went to queue up at like 12 a.m., 12 p.m.
Uh-huh.
So I was first in line. I ran like hell and I got to be in front of the microphone, of Paul's microphone, and there was no separation between stage and audience. It's a small pub.
Yeah.
So if I did this, I would touch Paul.
Yeah.
He would look at my t-shirt I had then, and I had this t-shirt that was all black with the dice in here,
Hmm.
and on the sleeve it had McCartney 3, and here the dice with the 3, the
Right.
number 3, right? So I would show Paul my sleeve, and he would go like this to my sleeve. And yeah, the only bad part is that the sound was so loud compared to the stadium gigs. I would have tinnitus for a week. I couldn't hear anything for a week. But can you imagine having Paul like this distance from you doing an hour and 40 minutes?
I'm
And that's
pretty
the
close.
first and only time I saw him in the flesh doing From Me to You.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I've been lucky with a few small club shows. I was there for the Mean Fiddler in England. It
Wow.
so happens that's when I went on vacation. I had no idea he was going to do this. And whatever plans I had of visiting historical sites in England, thrown out the window as soon as I heard that
Wow.
Paul was doing this show and I had to try and get tickets. But I wasn't right next to him. I probably was 30 feet away on the floor. Everybody was standing. I felt like this was like what the cavern was. So it's
Yeah,
an
such
incredible experience.
the
Yeah.
atmosphere was so amazing because in a stadium, an open stadium or a big arena, the sound kind of gets dissipated, gets lost. But in such a small venue, a little pub, completely closed, people would sing so loud, and it was such a feeling like it would reverberate in your chest.
Right.
Uh, the bass drum I would feel the bass drum here. It was such an amazing experience. I mean, I was joking after the concert that Paul McCartney played in a venue that was smaller than the venues where the Paul McCartney tribute bands perform. That was what I used to tell people after the gig.
Right. Have you seen Paul do, because you know when he does sound checks, he does all the
Yeah,
songs that he won't do as part of the concert. And that's another thing. It wouldn't, the band knows these songs, you know, the Carl Perkins stuff that they do, or, Honey Hush or songs like that. He could easily whip those out, and maybe he's thinking that won't get as great a crowd reaction or something. But when you saw him at this small club, did he do other material or was it kind of the same show?
the only it was a warm-up show, so he did pretty much a reduced version of the set list that was going to happen at a stadium 2 days later at
Yeah.
Mané Garrincha Stadium. But the only thing different was From Me to You. But I've seen a couple of the sound checks. One is when I was so lucky being at the right place and the right time in Brazil. There was this woman that was following Paul throughout the tour,
Mm.
and she got sound check, hot sound packages for the whole tour. So she was a rich Brazilian, and at this particular show, she was going like, you know that in South America, 99% of the shows are standing room admission. So you have to be standing up with people pushing behind you, thousands and thousands pushing behind you, and you have to be fit for that, right? In good physical shape.
Yeah.
So this woman told me, I'm very tired. I would just like to go at showtime and stay in the back. And she offered to trade my regular standing room ticket for her hot sound package. And I was like, okay. So we traded, and I got to see my first sound check. And it was such an experience because it was 65 minutes of 14 songs that Paul didn't do, except Lady Madonna. The
Yeah.
rest of the sound check was songs he didn't do on the main gig. And then in 2019, before COVID, Paul came to Argentina and I won this contest with a meet and greet
Yes.
that allowed me to meet Paul and see the sound check for free.
Yep.
So that's how I got to hear I Don't Know. The
Yeah.
song I Don't Know from Egypt Station, he did it at soundcheck and I was delighted.
Right.
And I got to meet Paul, say hello, take my picture with him. And then I was bold enough to sing with Paul. So I can say I joined Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder. I sang with Paul. And I thought about it in advance. I was like, what do I do? This cannot be, because I was telling my plan to the other meet and greeters. And they were like, oh, let's sing to him Penny Lane. And I'm like, he doesn't want to hear that. He's tired of the Beatles. And I came up with the idea of doing a song of the album he was promoting then
Yeah.
to make sure that Paul would join in. So I decided to sing a bit of For You.
Hmm.
So Paul came, we did the picture, he said hello and shook hands with everyone. And as he was leaving and saying goodbye, I put the air in my lungs and I went, come on, baby, now, let me look at you. And Paul turned around, came to me, and started, talk about yourself, try to tell the truth. And all of a sudden, everyone is singing along with Paul. On the night that I met you, everyone's singing for you. And we did the whole verse and chorus, and everyone clapped, and Paul did like this, said goodbye, and left.
He should have made a video of that alone, that he would put out
You know,
himself.
at the meet and greets,
Yeah.
you have to leave your phone and backpack and everything on
Yeah.
the side. You cannot have anything with you.
Mm.
It's totally forbidden. You cannot ask for autographs. You cannot have your phone with you. So you have to let MJ Kim do the picture. He's Paul's photographer for those listening who don't know. He does the picture and then they send the picture to you. But you're forbidden to do any filming or recording or anything
Mm.
when you meet him. But then the music channel in Argentina that was in charge of the meet and greet, the contest, they uploaded an edited version of the meet and greet to their webpage with the title "The Emotive Time When Paul McCartney Met His Fans in Argentina." And there's a bit of us all singing together for you, and me making a fool of myself. After Paul left, they filmed me crying like a baby, sobbing,
Uh-huh.
and trying to speak English to the camera. I mean, when English is not your native language, it's hard to speak in another language when you just met Paul McCartney and you're crying your eyes out and you're in shock. I was in
Yeah.
shock. So the guy filmed me and asked me a question, and I was like, it doesn't get any better than this. I may someday get married, I may someday have kids, but this will be the greatest moment of my life, and nothing can top this. And I said something like this to the camera.
That's one of
Yeah.
those things, as you know, in recent years that Paul has invited fans up on stage and, he'll autograph their arm or their leg or, where there's a tattoo or, some part of the body, or even um, the couple of guys from New Jersey that got to jam with him during a sound check. Those are things that anytime there's an anniversary of that, I'm sure they mark it as one of the greatest days of their lives. The fact that he
Yeah,
allowed.
well, in 2016, a friend of mine who is now, I think she's 20 or 21, her name is Layla, like the song, but with an E.
Okay.
She had a big sign saying, "I want to play bass with you." She was like 13 then,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, she was, no, she was 11, I think. And and they picked her and took her on stage. And Paul asked her, "What do you want to do?" And she said, "I want to play bass." And what? So they gave her a bass. And they did get back with this little girl, Layla, playing bass, guitar throughout Get Back and singing backing vocals with Paul on the mic. That was in Argentina. And she's a good friend of mine now. Her mom is too. And I went to the concert last weekend with her, with them.
That's just amazing that these people have these stories to tell. I mean, how many stars would allow that to happen with them on stage, you
Yeah.
know? So anyway, getting back to these two shows in Buenos Aires, I was asking if you notice, like from the crowd, what did they respond to the most? Were any of them I would guess mainly the Beatles songs and the big solo hits, Band on the Run and Live and Let Die. How does Live and Let Die do well with all the pyrotechnics and
Well, Live and Let Die is a surefire bet, as you say in America, a surefire bet,
yeah,
because it is one of the most well-known songs, especially because uh, Guns N' Roses are very, very popular in Argentina, always were. And when they covered Live and Let Die, many people thought that's a Guns N' Roses song.
yeah,
To later discover that it was a Paul McCartney song, a Wings song. But Live and Let Die always go great. People go crazy. And when after the fireworks and when the fast part starts, like da da dam, da da dam, you have to hold yourself to dear life because people go crazy and start jumping around and doing something called pogo in Argentina, where everyone is jumping and moving around, and you might get knocked out.
okay,
Everyone goes crazy at the stadium, and of course in the slow songs, everyone with their phones
right,
light the venue. But to answer your question, the songs that go the best are the Beatles songs, of course, and Band on the Run. Everyone sings along to the chorus.
right,
And yeah, anything Beatle goes great. And the Wing songs go great as well. And there's not many solo songs in other than Come On to Me, My Valentine, and a couple others. There's not many. So but we don't have bathroom breaks because people is like this, all squashed to the
Yeah.
front of the stage, standing room. If you want to go to the toilet, then you have to wait for the concert to be over.
It's really interesting, this whole idea, since you've said since the beginning of this talk about standing room. That makes it very difficult for older people to see these shows because it's got to be tough for them to stand through the entire concert. I went to see Sean Lennon several years ago in a small club, and there were no seats. You had to stand, and there were several acts before Sean. He was the last one, so I had to stand for like 3 4 hours, and it's tough to do that, especially as you get older. So he's definitely reaching out to a younger audience by doing that. It's got to,
Yeah, but you have to remember this, Ken. You have the standing room admission in front of the stage.
yeah,
But on the sides, it's a football stadium or soccer as you call it in the US.
okay.
So on the sides, it's all sitting down.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant that it was all
Of
standing.
course, being such a big stadium, you will
Yeah,
see Paul this size,
yeah,
very small, and you'll watch the screens. If you want to be in front, you have to be standing. That's it.
yeah.
But you have chairs on the sides and on the back.
Okay. So, is there any one particular concert other than obviously the first one is so special that is your favorite of all the shows you've seen from him?
Well,
Of
I
course,
would have to say the
it's small
first one,
club.
of course, because
Yeah,
it's the first one,
yeah,
and it was the New World Tour, and you are a fan of someone in a country at the bottom of South America, and you have the Beatles posters on your wall, and you're 14 years old, and never a Beatle came to Argentina, so the thought of seeing a Beatle in the flesh performing is
yeah.
something very foreign to you, right?
Hmm.
It's not like, oh, Wings performed here in 1976. No, they didn't even come close to performing in Argentina. So in 1993, when it happened, it was like a lot of people couldn't believe it. And I couldn't believe it either. I was 16 years old and I was there at the River Plate Stadium, and it was ecstasy from the first chord to the last Hey Jude chorus with
Okay.
which the concert ended. It was ecstasy. I don't want to use the word orgasm, but it was a 2 hour and a half orgasm for me and for thousands that day. And another concert I really enjoyed was Rio de Janeiro in May of 2011, simply because I had never seen a concert outside of my country. So that was the first of many, many times I traveled outside the country, especially to see Paul. So it was a different environment, and the people, culturally, we're all different.
Hmm.
The audience in each country is different. So the fact that I was in Brazil, in the middle of a sea of Brazilians, and it was such a party, people singing along and dancing and doing choreography and holding signs. It was magical for me. So I would have to pick the Rio concerts from 2011 as the ones I enjoyed the most, along with the New World Tour ones.
Oh, great. Yeah. I know that for me, as much as I love going to see the performance, I get as much of a kick of watching the audience and how they respond, especially seeing parents with their kids together or young couples dating for the first time and they haven't seen Paul ever. And they're just in shock for every song that he does, especially if it's a Beatles song or it's a classic from his solo career. So, you know, that's what I take with me when I see Paul, apart from just being grateful that he's doing anything at all, at this stage of the game. But
I think Paul is one of those magical things that go beyond music. For example, last time I was in Brasilia last year, there was like a 17-year-old girl,
yeah,
very tiny, very skinny, and she had a Paul McCartney t-shirt. She went to the concert on her own, and she was like this, all upset because she couldn't see because people in front of her at the standing room concert were taller than her.
yeah,
So I took her by the arm, put her in front of me, and she got a straight view of Paul in front. And those are the kind of things that make me keep my faith in humanity. Like
Right.
seeing the younger generations, people, because it reminded me of me. I was 16 years old when I saw Paul for the first time.
Mm.
And to be in front of that guy for the first time, it was such an experience that I didn't want this girl to miss it. So I took her by the arm, put her in front of me, and there she was, crying her eyes out because Paul was in front of her, and Paul is 82. And this girl is 17, and the connection,
Uh,
how people connect with music, no matter the age, right?
that's so great what you just said right there. And part of the joy for me is just knowing that Paul really loves doing this. He's never gotten tired of it. Maybe he just lives for this audience. He loves the feedback. He loves to see the love and the warmth from the audience. He loves seeing signs. He loves seeing different ages come to see his shows. And just the fact that he could stop doing this anytime he wants to, so could Ringo, but they still keep doing it. So that's
Yeah,
why I
we all
said,
know it's not about the money by now.
no, no. But you know, what was it he said? I was watching an interview that he did with is it Jimmy Fallon here. He had spoken to Willie Nelson at the time, and he was just commenting to him that people have said to him, when are you going to retire? And Willie Nelson responded to that, and then he said, retire from what? This is what they do. This is what they love doing. And in many ways, he doesn't refer to it as work. This is fun for him.
You
So
just reminded me of this interview with Paul I saw the other day, and it's doing the rounds in the social media. And this reporter asked Paul, "Aren't you too old to rock and roll? Aren't you like 31 now?" And Paul would get all upset, like, "What are you talking about?" And look, we are talking about Paul doing Helter Skelter at 82. And a
right.
reporter asked Paul if he was too old to rock and roll at 31, when Paul was 31, going on tour with Wings.
That's how Paul thought. When he was younger, he thought, maybe I'll retire when I'm 35 or something like that. And
Yeah.
when you get to
I
35,
cannot be a 30-year-old doing na 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 dum dum dum. I have to retire. I cannot do that at 30. And look,
hey, John said he wasn't he couldn't see himself singing She Loves You when he's 40 or 30. And he was 40 when he
yeah,
died. Who knows if he had lived, if he would have done a song like that, or he was talking about I Want to Hold Your Hand, the
yeah.
Double Fantasy Sessions. But anyway, this has been great sharing your memories of
I've really enjoyed this, Ken. Let's do this more often.
you're my South American guy. I'll get an African guy, I'll get an Australian guy or something, or a woman. It's an equal opportunity place here. But
Of course.
if people want to get in touch with you, shall I share your Facebook page?
Of course.
Okay, we'll do
All
that.
Beatles fans are welcome to join me in my craziness.
Okay. Do you have a party every time it's the anniversary of when you sang with Paul?
Not really, but every time someone meets me and sees my profile picture with Paul
Yeah.
in social media, they ask, and I tell them the story of how that came about. I made a video for a contest, my video
Yeah.
won, and the rest is history.
Well, I just hope that at some point you and I get to see Paul together with my wife
Why
and my
not?
family or something. So either I'm going to have to fly down to Buenos Aires or you're going to have to come up here. That would be fantastic.
Okay, I'll be there. While there's life, there's hope, my
That's
grandmother used to say. So why not?
okay. That's what John said
As
too.
people used to say, why not?
Mhm. Very good. All right. Thank you, Javi, for spending this time with us. And thanks to all of you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. Love getting those subscription numbers up. And I'll be back soon with another show. Thanks so much for being there, folks.